Today, we travel through light years and centuries, tracking the dark evolution of humanity. From Earth to the edge of time, turn off the lights, clear your mind, and let yourself drift into the deep void of our forgotten tomorrow. Every story has a beginning, but our story begins with an end. Imagine a world where the oceans are silent and the sky is no longer blue, but a heavy, suffocating shade of gray. A world where Earth, our cradle, became our cage. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity looked up at the stars with curiosity. But 1,000,000 years ago, we stopped looking up with curiosity and started looking up with desperation. The resources were gone, the atmosphere was collapsing, and the planet was gently dying beneath our feet. The soil turned to ash. The rivers became toxic veins of black sludge. Plants refused to grow, and the last forests withered into bone-dry skeletons under a dying, smog-choked sun. We were a species facing our twilight. There was no salvation coming from above, and no hope left below. We had no choice but to build the Exodus fleet. These were not sleek, fast exploratory vessels. They were colossal, brutalist mountains of steel and titanium, carved out of rocky asteroids and built in the cold, lifeless silence of Earth's orbit. They were massive flying cities, artificial ecosystems, and floating tombs all at the same time. They were built with the blood, sweat, and final resources of a collapsing civilization. Inside their cold hulls, the air smelled of ozone and recycled plastic. When the last colony ship closed its heavy pneumatic airlocks, it closed the final chapter of terrestrial history. Millions of people stood frozen on the observation decks, watching through thick glass as their home planet grew smaller. As the massive ion engines ignited, creating a faint, blinding, artificial sun in the upper atmosphere, humanity turned its back on Earth and pushed forward into the permanent midnight of the cosmos. The shockwave of the engines rippled through the steel floors, a low vibration that would never stop. They left, knowing they would never return. They left, knowing that the journey ahead would take thousands of years. They were refugees of time, sailing into a dark ocean with no map and no harbor. Close your eyes and imagine the sheer weight of that realization. Behind them, a dead home decaying into a frozen rock. Ahead of them, nothing but an endless black ocean waiting to swallow them whole. To understand who they became, we must understand how they lived. Inside the generation ships, time lost its meaning. The concepts of morning, afternoon, and evening were reduced to cold digital signals on glowing screens. There were no days, no nights, no seasons. Only the constant, rhythmic, brain-numbing hum of the ship's fusion reactor, vibrating through the metal floors, through the walls, and through the bones of every living soul. That hum became the heartbeat of our species. Imagine being born in the third generation. To you, Earth is nothing but a fairy tale, a digital ghost stored in the ship's corrupted archives. You have never seen a real tree. You have never felt the chaotic, wild touch of wind or the warmth of a real sun. Your entire universe is 5 meters wide, bounded by cold, metallic bulkheads and flickering LED tubes. The corridors are your only streets. The steel ceiling is your only sky. The air you breathe has been recycled 1,000,000 times, passing through the lungs of your dead ancestors before reaching yours. The water you drink is reclaimed from moisture, purified, and completely sterile, devoid of any natural taste. Life inside the fleet was calculated to the smallest detail. Every single life was a math problem. Every birth was approved by an algorithm based on available oxygen. Every death was a cold, statistical necessity. When a person died, their body was not buried in the soil, for there was no soil. They did not receive a funeral under the open sky. They were dissolved, chemically broken down, and recycled back into the ship's hydroponic bays to feed the next generation. Your ancestors became the food you ate and the air you breathed. Nothing was wasted, not even human sorrow. Grief was a luxury the life support systems could not afford. As the centuries bled into millennia, the psychological toll began to warp the human mind. The human brain was evolved to process the vast, infinite horizons of Earth. Confronted with the claustrophobic reality of a steel box and the absolute crushing silence of deep space, something broke inside us. The walls felt like they were closing in, inch by inch, every single hour. Entire sectors of the fleet fell victim to what the medics called the abyss sickness. It was a quiet, terrifying madness. A person would simply stop talking, drop their tools, and walk to the nearest viewport. They would look out into the blackness through the small glass and stare for weeks. They would not eat, they would not sleep until their mind completely faded away into the void, leaving behind an empty, breathing shell. Space was not just a distance to be crossed. It was an active, hostile force, slowly chipping away at the human soul, hollowing us out from the inside. But humanity is terrifyingly adaptable. Where the mind fractured, the biology endured. The body did not care about sanity, it cared only about survival. The ships traveled slowly at a mere fraction of the speed of light. And as the millennia passed, the environment inside the fleet began to subtly, silently, rewrite human DNA. The artificial gravity wheels were imperfect and weak. They generated a shifting, low gravitational pull, much lighter than Earth's. Over generations, the human body responded to this lack of resistance. Spines began to elongate, stretching the human silhouette into a tall, frail, needle-like figure. Muscles shrunk, wasting away because there was no heavy gravity to fight against. Bones lost their density, becoming thin, hollow, and fragile, resembling the delicate anatomy of deep-sea creatures. The human silhouette was changing, moving away from the heavy muscular build of Earth and stretching into something skeletal, fluid, and otherworldly. But the most profound, terrifying change happened in the darkness. To conserve energy across a voyage of 10,000 years, the lights inside the living quarters were turned down. They were kept at a permanent twilight. A soft, dim, ghostly blue luminescence was the only light our eyes ever saw. The human eye, faced with a world of endless shadows, began to adapt. Generation after generation, the pupils dilated further, stretching wider and wider, and they never contracted again. The iris expanded, consuming the whites of our eyes. Over thousands of years, the sclera darkened completely, turning into massive pitch-black orbs designed to absorb every single stray photon of light in the dark corridors. These were no longer eyes that expressed joy, anger, or love. They were massive, void-like lenses, searching for shapes in the permanent gloom of deep space. Their skin, never again exposed to ultraviolet radiation or natural light, completely lost its melanin. It became pale, translucent, veins showing through like blue lines on marble. Eventually, it took on a cold, chalky gray hue, reflecting the sterile light of the ship's metal walls. The hair on our bodies, once used for warmth, withered away completely, leaving behind a smooth, hairless gray skin. We were no longer the people who left Earth. If you were to stand before one of them, you would not see a man. You would see an entity with an elongated body, frail limbs, smooth, hairless gray skin, and massive, dark eyes that seemed to look straight through your soul. They did not choose this transformation. The abyss of deep space forged them in its own horrific image. As the human body changed, the way they connected changed too. Inside the steel hulls, silence became a religion, a tool for survival. Loud speech was strictly discouraged to prevent panic and hysteria in the tight spaces. But more importantly, as neural technology advanced and biotechnology merged with our brains, the need for spoken words began to wither away. Why speak when you can share a thought? Why use a clunky, slow voice when a neural link can transmit an emotion, a memory, or a complex mathematical equation across the entire fleet in a millisecond? The voice became obsolete. The mouth, used less and less for communication, grew smaller. The teeth, no longer needed for hard food, shrank into smooth ridges. The jaw relaxed, minimized, and locked into a permanent, motionless line. The vocal cords, over 10,000 years of complete silence, slowly atrophied, becoming vestigial, quiet remnants of a past they no longer belonged to. They became a collective, a silent, unified mind, moving through the stars like a single organism. Individual egos washed away into a shared, massive consciousness designed for pure survival. There were no more lies, no more secrets, no more loneliness. They were one. They were now the sentinels of the void. They had crossed the great dead expanse between the stars. They had survived the collapse of their world, the madness of the isolation, and the brutal rewriting of their own biology. They had achieved what their primitive ancestors would call immortality. They felt no pain, no fear, no anger, but the cost was everything that made them human. They had conquered the stars, but they had lost their soul. And yet, as this silent collective looked out into the destination system towards a new alien planet, their massive dark eyes did not feel joy. They felt nothing but a profound, heavy, cosmic nostalgia, a deep, aching desire to look back at the world they lost, to study the timeline that brought them into this cold, gray existence. They did not know that their journey was a loop. They did not know that their highly advanced technology, which allowed them to survive the void, would eventually allow them to pierce the fabric of space and time. They discovered how to fold reality, how to create wormholes that bridge the gap between millennia. And they did not know that one day they would build metallic, disc-shaped machines to travel back to a primitive, vibrant, blue planet called Earth. We are tracing the archives of our future selves. When you look into the night sky and wonder if someone is watching from the dark, remember this: it is not an alien intelligence looking down upon you with malice. It is your own descendant, hollowed out by the cosmos, looking back at their cradle. They are watching us breathe the fresh air they lost. They are watching us look at the blue sky they forgot. Sleep now. The engines are quiet, and the timeline is secure.